Senator Bishop here made a comment, and he did, he fought hard last time, but the legislator allowed, now he was just a palace in Lansing to be built that nobody wanted built, except two very prominent businessmen who paid a lot of money to the legislature and the governors.
State police headquarters, please.
Yeah.
So, I'm a little suspect in areas when it comes to.
I'm sorry, say it again, Mike.
When you say,
if I could,
here and there, there's $50 million boondoggle downtown.
let me answer the question, one part of your question. You asked, make a distinction between general fund and federal monies. I'm arguing within our caucus that we need to cut Gordian knots, that we've got to stop letting our hands be tied by the fact that general fund dollars are tied to federal dollars. If a program isn't worth having and isn't accomplishing a purpose, then I don't want the fact that the federal government is giving us money to perpetuate its existence. And the fact of the matter is that we need to understand that bureaucracies in Lansing create justifications for bureaucracies in Washington, D.C., who then in turn around and create justifications for bureaucracies in the State House, and they feed off of each other, and that's why you have the slow, steady ratcheting upward of the size and scope and cost of government. And so I'm arguing with our appropriations subcommittee chairs right now that don't be afraid to cut spending, even if it means forsaking federal dollars, if that's what we need to do to balance the budget and avoid tax increases, which I also oppose.
And let me say that, we could say we have spines, but you guys help us have those spines as well. I mean, I relate, when Mike says that things started to turn when the Tea Party folks came out, I remember August '09, we had votes up that day, in August or September it was, and I got a text from one of the leaders of the Tea Party statewide, and she said, "We're going to score this vote, by the way." And I went up and down and I said, "The Tea Party is going to score this on their naughty and nice voting coming up for Christmas." And you could see the greens go red, or greens go red quite a bit. And they do. The legislature does fear the grassroots right now. I would think that's a good thing, and you need to keep that up. But I mean, if we're going to make the tough votes, I hope that when they go to recall us or when they go to use us, and defeat us, that you're going to be there to help support us as well. And so that's something I want to mention. Yes, Mary.
As you know, I go way back to recalling Senator Maston and a bunch of his crazy housewives over the income tax increase. But I'm a lot for of what our new governor is trying to do. But my concern too was hearing this thing about taxing the pensions. I've even tried to go into the government website to see what base they're going to use, what level he's planning on using, what cost it's going to be. And the other one that really upset me was doing away with the homestead property tax credit, which could mean increasing our property taxes by 30% or more. When instead, I would rather have, instead of increasing the taxes on any level for any taxpayer out here, I would rather have the investigation of the bureaucracy that we are paying for. Amen. And seeing if some of that can be cut out, because I'm all for doing away with the business tax. But let's see if these public workers wind up unemployed, let them go out of state looking for jobs so we can bring the private sector back to new jobs. I remember back when, I think it was Senator Cassis first brought it out, with this unfunded health care for public employees. And I started reading through that bill. And then I saw without a vote of the people. And then I saw ad valorem and special assessments. What that meant was if when they sold the bonds and they didn't work out, it was going to be shoved down our property taxes to pay for. I talked to her on the phone. Eventually that got killed there. Went to another freshman rep, died there, and then, I'll say his name, at the time, Representative Jim Marlowe brought this bloody bill out again. I'm writing letters to the papers. Read it, folks.
Yeah.
Well, we out here in the private sector are having more shoes drop on our health care than we have feet.
Right.
If those bonds didn't work out, if this thing went through without our vote, which was a violation of the Headley Amendment, with increasing our property taxes would have been a
Yeah.
violation of the Headley Amendment. But we would not only wind up paying for more on our health insurance, we would also wind up paying for public employees. Marlo called me up one day to talk about the school issue, about getting them on their elections on the general elections, and then brought it up about my letter to the paper
I've got
regarding this
3
issue.
minutes, and I need to
Okay.
get a couple more.
Anyway,
Keep
when
going.
I turned around and asked him, and this is where I call the verbal gymnastics you go through with some of our reps. When I said to him, you mean you would violate your oath of office to put this through? Because you're violating our rights on this? And he said, well, we promised these public servants. And I said, first of all, Jim, you weren't even in office when the promise was made. We in the private sector have made a lot of promises, but we've been hurt because of the economy. But you tell me you want to base this on a promise instead of your oath, would you violate your oath? And he finally could not believe it, said he would. Violate his oath of office.
Yeah.
I'm tired of the verbal gymnastics we get out of Lansing and telling, well, our lawyers don't agree with you, as if we can't read.
Okay, I've got
What's in
2
the
minutes,
bill?
and I know I got at least 4 questions. Gary, and then right here, and then we're going to have to be done. Go ahead, Gary.
I strongly agreed with Leon Drolet's guest opinion, I think in the Detroit News last week, in which he expressed disappointment that as opposed to Governor Walker in Wisconsin, who's hitting the problem head-on, our governor talks about raising taxes on seniors instead of going after where the real expenditures are. And I say this in all seriousness, and I think you should adopt it as a measure for yourselves, and I'm talking to my friends. If you don't have 80,000 people around the Capitol, you're not doing enough. Because the kind of solution we need is the kind of solution we need budget-wise is one that puts a dagger at the heart of the problem. And if you do it, there'll be 80,000. So if there aren't 80,000 in front of the Capitol, I think you ought to accept that as a measure. You haven't gone far enough.
All right. Yes.
Yeah, one of the biggest expenditures you haven't mentioned here, but the Obamacare, I don't know how much that's going to impact our state, but I believe in specific pills for specific ills. I believe it's the state of, could be Idaho or one of the western states, just the lower house just passed nullification. Why can't Michigan jump on the nullification aspect so that we're not caught short? If we rely just on the Attorney General fighting it, that's like, I know there's 17 other Attorney Generals that are doing the same thing, but then that's going to go to the Supreme Court. The nullification would circumvent the Supreme Court.
I've got a copy here.
Good. Going through the Supreme Court would be like asking the attorneys for your opponent's legal team to decide your case for you.
Okay.
So-
All right. Well, I mean, and I
Why not
don't,
nullification?
okay, I hear you, and I guess we kind of got sidetracked as far as the budget process. And I apologize, but, just real quick, Mary, he's not, the proposal on the homestead, just so you know, is instead of 160, 60% for under 65 or whatever it is, and 100% for over, it's 80% for everybody. So it's not doing away with the homestead, it's saying some right now get 60%, some get 100, he's gonna make it
Where can we read
80.
it online, though?
But, okay,
That's
yeah.
another thing. I couldn't find anything on the pensions. I
Yeah,
couldn't
I
find
think
anything
he's,
on the whole.
I know, I think they're, and then also on the pensions, the health, the, Social Security, and, with, Social Security is not taxed, so they say that about $40,000 will still be not taxed, the first $40,000 of your average senior who gets Social Security, and then with the deductions and credits, it would be about 40 grand. But at any rate, we're not,
That's in the governor's budget proposal
Yeah.
of February, and it is a tax hike, both of those.
okay. But I mean, I gotta say that if we increase the taxes so that some people are paying a fair share, but we cut it for everybody else by twice as much, or cut everybody's by twice as much, you would say, you know, that there's an overall tax cut. I mean, Grover Norquist and the Americans for Tax Reform have said that it's a tax cut. I know, and I'm not defending it, I'm just saying that this is what the governor's putting out there. But again, we're supposed to be talking about the budget process, studying expenditures, comparing it to constitutional legislative authorities. Did you want to wrap up?
Well, yeah, I'll just say this, is that I understand the argument that you're making, because I've been making the same one among my colleagues. It's simply too easy for those of us in government to reach out to the private sector and say, oh, just give us a little bit more to get us through this year or that year or the other. You're right. The issue is spending. Over the last few years, under Governor Granholm, we've seen a cigarette tax increase. We've seen a property tax increase. We had 3 years of collected in 2.5 years. We've had an income tax increase. It's not like Republicans, when they were in the legislature at various times, didn't go along with short-term revenue increases. I would point out these were over my objections. I voted against them. Okay, but so the point I'm making in our debate right now is that we've been living off the shared sacrifice of the taxpayers for the last 8 years. Okay, and unfortunately, that's the circumstance that Governor Snyder has inherited, and that's why I'm arguing, as one member of the Senate, for more spending reductions, and continue to do that.
Mike?
A lot more.
You know, I'm not in the legislature anymore. My heart goes out to folks my heart goes out to folks who are really trying to connect with all of you, and it just seems overwhelming. I hope that there's not any bad feelings that come out of discussions like this, because all of us are in the same boat. We really certainly want to be this, part of this. I was part of the Mastin recall too. I mean, that was near and dear to my heart as well. Mastin and Sirotkin, and I know there are some other folks that might be involved in that as well. But hey, look, the governor's proposed something. There are a lot of things in there that we don't agree with. Individually, we may like some ideas, we may not like some ideas. But the idea is that it's now our responsibility to take the proposal that's on the table and clearly identify what we like and what we don't like, and then make proposals ourselves. The Senate is fortified with a supermajority. The House has a lot of great, very conscientious conservatives like Tom McMillan, who are going to take the time to listen to you on each one of these items. If you don't like what the governor's proposed, I don't like the idea of tax increases. I don't like the idea of government-owned bridges. I don't like the idea of the MEDC and a lot of things that are going on there. I don't like it. If I were governor, there would be hundreds of thousands of people on the lawn, but it's not me. I'm not. And I think my own wife would be under some protesting. But these guys have a big job to do, and it's our responsibility to support them and to make sure that they make the right decisions. And I think they will. I genuinely think they've got they're fortified, the backbone to get it done, and it's up to us to support them.
All right, thanks for coming. We got to get you back.